They got Willa. They got my daughter. I need to find her. Willa!
From acclaimed director Paul Thomas Anderson.
You can save that girl.
Today, experience what is being called the best movie of the year.
This is the end of the line.
Not for you.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Tiana Taylor, Chase Infinity.
Let's go!
One battle after another. Now playing only in theaters. Experience it in IMAX. Rated R. Under 17 animated without parent.
You can hide.
Finish training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
At Starbucks, we've more than doubled paid parental leave, now up to 18 weeks. Which means Starbucks baristas can spend more time with the best company they know, their families. At Starbucks, benefits like parental leave are just the start.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How We're the podcast as we gather to talk through the ins and outs of Sunderland's confusing draw at the Stadium of Light against Aston Villa. And I say confusing because I'm not sure I felt as proud and as frustrated as I have ever after such a good performance. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. And luckily I have two gentlemen who I hope will put all of this into perspective. And first up, you might have heard him on the Match Reaction pod straight after the final whistle. It is, of course, Gavin Henderson. Hello, Gav.
Hello, mate. Yes, my voice is still a little bit croaky from the game, but it was earned, I think. Barking on as the lads gave us a cracking battling performance. So I've certainly earned this croaky voice.
It was, and we were just talking before we started recording. And you mentioned it actually on the preview pod, I think, but 2:00 kickoff on a Sunday.
Ugh,
I don't want too many of these.
We've got a 5:30 one next week, haven't we? So they keep moving games around it. Yeah, it's totally messed with me weekend because I feel like it's as I sit and record this, peek behind the curtain and all that. We are recording it on Sunday night, and it feels like a Saturday night, and I'm thinking, oh well, I've got tomorrow off work, haven't I? But no, I'm back to work tomorrow. The fixtures have been pretty kind to us so far, but we're getting hit over the head twice in 2 weeks. So
yeah,
yes, hate early kickoffs, hate moving the kickoffs, hate Sundays. Just leave it 3:00 on a Saturday. Just leave it there.
Yeah, we got lucky with a few 3:00 Saturdays, but this one's hit us hard, I think. But yeah, so as well as Gav, and I've mentioned it a few times recently, because we do like someone who knows their stuff on this podcast to put the likes of me and Gav in our place, and today is no different. We're very pleased to have the company of a good friend of the podcast from the Sunderland Echo. We have Phil Smith. Hello, Phil.
Evening. Thanks for having me. What a very generous introduction that was. I'm flattered. Thank you.
Well, we like to treat our guests well, Phil. But yeah, I mean, how did you find it today? I mean, did you find Gav's talking about the early atmosphere, and I'm watching it from afar as an exile, but actually, you had the big build up of the opening game of the season against West Ham. Brentford, you felt everyone up. 3:00 kickoff on a Saturday. Funny, Sundays just have this weird feeling about it when you go to the match, isn't it? It just feels different.
Yeah, I just don't like Sunday games. I mean, I can sort of just about accept the 4:00 one because I kind of grew up with Super Sunday, so you kind of don't mind that one. It feels like quite a big thing to have the Super Sunday 4:00, but yeah, 2:00 on a Sunday is absolutely rubbish. I thought the atmosphere was really good, kind of in spite of it, to be fair, but it did make me think that we were really lucky to get, especially that first weekend, to get a Saturday 3:00, because I think it just does lend itself to the best atmosphere. And, I think having that for the West Ham and the Brentford game, I think we've been really fortunate with that. But to be fair, I thought the atmosphere was really good today. There's nothing like a red card, whether it's the right or wrong decision to get people fired up and into the game. So I did think the atmosphere was quality, to be fair. But yeah, Sunday 2:00. One of the many things about modern football that can get in the bin as far as I'm concerned. Very high on the list.
That's it. I think we might have to get used to it being in the Premier League. But look, we'll get into it because I want to start with you, Phil, if I can, because I want to. I mean, let's rewind back to before the kickoff, and that how we kind of what we were thinking before that whistle went, because there was the news that actually we hadn't picked up on, in the previews and things like that, with Diarra being out with a muscle injury during training. And I don't know if at what point that filtered through to you, Phil, and when you heard about that.
Well, as far as I'm aware, it literally happened in training yesterday. So I think it was a last minute thing. I think the team was pretty much picked. So I heard about it this morning. I believe some people may have known about it last night, but I was otherwise engaged. So it doesn't reflect particularly well on me as a journalist. But so I was behind the news on that one. But yeah, I think it was really last minute. Definitely, it happened in pretty much the last training session before the game. So yeah, and I have to say, from obviously there isn't a diagnosis yet, but from the word from speaking to people today, it sounds like they think he's going to be out for a few weeks, I think. And Labrie sort of said afterwards that he's anticipating being without him for a while. So hopefully it's good news and that's wrong. But I think the initial assessment seems to be that I'd be amazed from what I've heard today if he's back before the next international break, which is a blow. But I thought Chris Rigg was excellent, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, actually, just getting into that, Gav. I mean, the late news that Diarra was out, but I actually raised an eyebrow when I thought about it when Chris Rigg came in for him, and maybe it was because we were at home and we were looking for that attacking player. But Gertrude came on against Palace in midfield, but you were talking about the option to bring him on Matterbein because he's physicality, and we needed that against Palace. But obviously, there's this kind of almost that cloud hanging over, not cloud, but this thing that Dan Neil hasn't played captain last season. It's been this talking point. And then when a midfield option does come up, he didn't get the nod and Chris Rigg got the nod. I mean, were you surprised that it was Chris Rigg given the nod over Dan Neil?
I was kind of expecting, because like Phil said, we'd heard rumours of Diarra being injured, so my expectation was that it would be Lafay taking his place, and you would have a Dingra on the wing, possibly. But yeah, yes, I was surprised when the news came through about the team. In the pub, when I was in the pub before the match, pretty much everybody was like, Rigg, really? And I mentioned this on the reaction pod that we did after the game, that whilst yes, I was a little bit surprised by it, ultimately that role in the team as that 8, to the side of the more defensive player. If we decided already that Lafay was going to play out wide, he's the most logical option, really, because Gertrude is a utility player, but somebody who Reggie Labrie said he sees as a centre half, and we've actually seen him come on the pitch as a midfielder and kind of fill in for whatever reason. And then Dan Neil, while I think he could play as an 8, is more of a defence-minded midfield player. I mean, he played that role Xhaka plays, didn't he, last season? So I wasn't, when I sat and thought about it, it made sense. And look, as Phil said, he might have only been on the pitch half an hour, but he played really well, and it kind of vindicated that decision. And the other thing about that as well is that Rigg's committed his long-term future to the club. The club sees something in Chris Rigg. He's 18-year-old. He's only going to improve. And Dan Neil hasn't signed that new deal yet, and we still don't know what's going on there. But in terms of like giving opportunities away, if everybody's working hard off the pitch and training and ready to play, at this stage it makes more sense to see Chris Rigg on the pitch, because Dan Neil could be gone in January. We don't know what's going on with him. We don't know. So we're kind of making assumptions there, but the point being that Rigg ultimately fit that job. He's a very different player to Diarra, completely different player, but still has a skill set which, you've seen a couple of the little sort of jinks and dropping of the shoulder and turning quickly. Like, we don't really have many players like that. I would say comparably, there's probably only Enzo Lafay really who sort of does that in midfield. So I was happy with it, and our core philosophy as a club is still to develop young players. You know, we've got a player in Chris Rigg who could go on to be unbelievable, but his progress only continues if he gets opportunities when they arise. And I presume that's one of the things that they sold him on when he kind of committed his future to the club, was that, you know, you're going to get chances in the Premier League, you're going to play Premier League football. Because if he'd left Sunderland and gone to another Premier League club, he would get them chances elsewhere. So the club's commitment to Rigg is to keep developing him in the way that they've promised, I presume, since he was a very, very young player. So yeah, was happy to see him.
Yeah. Well, was there any talk about that decision in the press box, Phil? Because I think Gav's just touched on there. I actually think Adingra was slightly unfortunate to drop back to the bench after his performance at Palace. I actually thought down that flank we looked quite dangerous against Palace, and he got to the byline a couple of times, took players on, looked positive. And, you know, when that place came up, Adingra might be thinking, you know, well, I should maybe keep my place. I played well in a good performance at Palace. And he's been pulled out, and Chris Rigg, who hasn't started yet this season, was put in.
Yeah, I think that I don't think there was a huge surprise, to be honest. I think if you think about it in the context, which I think is the key point here, this was a really late injury. I think if Diarra gets injured on Monday, then maybe it's a slightly different discussion. But I think given the fact that I assume the decision had already been taken to play Lefebvre off the left, I think what is the thing that disrupts the team the least? You know, you put Rigg in there, he's played in that position for the majority of last season. He's played however many games with Trey Hume. That relationship already exists down the right. And I think the one thing I would say as well is that Rigg hasn't, mainly because his pre-season was really disrupted because of injury, he hasn't had that many opportunities yet, but Lebris has been quite strong in his press conferences, and certainly the vibe behind the scenes has been that Rigg has trained unbelievably well and that this opportunity has kind of been coming for him, really. So I think it's partially what Gav was saying in terms of understanding that if you give these young players contracts and they commit to you when there's interest from elsewhere, they have to play when the opportunity presents itself. And also I think the fact that, which Gav alluded to as well, it disrupted the rest of the pitch the least, whereas if you brought Adingra in, you would have been changing a lot of what you've been working on in the week. So I do agree with you. I think Adingra has shown he's got a bit of quality, actually, that he can make something happen in the early weeks of the season. But I think it was given how late the decision clearly had to be made, I think it was a sensible one. And yeah, the only thing I would add to that is I definitely got the feeling over the last few weeks from the way people have been talking behind the scenes that I think there's been an eagerness to try and get Chris Rigg an opportunity, because I think they've been really, really impressed with how he's kind of stepped up in training.
Yeah. And Gav, just before we get into the action, we talked a bit about the atmosphere, but obviously that the club we're working with the Bradley Lowry Foundation on the Cancer Has No Colours. And there was a great display before kick-off, and the crowd obviously kind of got involved with that. And it was just fantastic that the club are pushing things like that and helping out, and, you know, making a big, you know, push about raising awareness for the foundation like that.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And, you know, Bradley Lowry and his family and what happened with him, I think that's always going to be woven through the fabric of our football club. You know, you saw even with the Aston Villa fans, I saw photos of their fans where they'd had flags made with Bradley on, and just to show their support. And I think it's important to acknowledge these things. It's part of our history, you know, it always will be. I think when you think of Jermaine Defoe, you think of Bradley Lowry, and you think of that period and what it all means. And yeah, just amazing and great. You know, these flag displays that we've done and that the club have contributed towards and all the rest of it. They've actually played a massive part in the start of the season. In every one of the first 3 games, there's been sort of something, and it doesn't always have to be a big intimidating tifo of a black cat or a lantern worm. If there's an important message to carry, then, you know, it's important that we do that. So yeah, hats off to everybody involved in that, and it's a great cause.
Absolutely. And kind of hats off to the club and the foundation for doing that. And Phil, just getting into the action, the first 5 minutes seemed like it was going to be that the whole game was going to be Reinildo versus Gusson down that left-hand side, because they were having a right tussle to start off with, but we'll come on to that. But there was a couple of half chances, and they all seemed to fall Sunderland's way in the first 20 minutes. But I would just on that first 20 minutes, it seemed like it was a proper game of chess, almost between the two managers. And then on the pitch, you had this battle where both sides were trying to work out when and how to press each other, and it was almost this game of chicken that went on in the first 20 minutes.
I thought it was. I thought Sunderland played well, and I thought it was pretty much a continuation, really, of what we've seen Sunderland do for most of the season, where they were trying to get on the front foot and be attacking where possible, but without ever giving too much up, right? And I think we've seen this from the opening weeks of the season, that Sunderland's plan, if you like, to stay up the season is to have a really good structure and a really good set up out of possession. And I thought the start of the game was a continuation of that. If we can get at Aston Villa, if we can create opportunities, we will. But we're not going to be cavalier about it. And I think you could see that there's, in every game this season, really, has been a huge kind of part of how Sunderland has been set up is to deny the opposition space. And I thought Sunderland did that well again today. You know, you don't want Ollie Watkins running at your defenders. You don't want their wide players driving at your defenders. And so I was really encouraged with how Sunderland started the game. I didn't think we were dominant or particularly sparkling or creating loads of opportunities, but I thought we looked more than the match for Aston Villa, who were so ponderous, weren't they? I mean, it was a weird one coming into the game because you sort of read about how Aston Villa, how poor they've been. You see the stats, haven't scored a goal, haven't won a Premier League game. And then the team drops an hour and 15 minutes before kickoff, and you're like, all right, okay. Because it's absolutely stacked, isn't it? The quality they've got. And I kind of didn't believe they'd be as poor as everyone's made out, but I thought they were really, really ponderous, lacking a lot of confidence. So, yeah, it was a strange one. I didn't feel Sunderland, deserved to be ahead or anything like that, but I think I felt there was a really good level of control that they had over the game.
Yeah. And like I said, that we had a few half chances in our first 20 minutes. And like you said, Phil, Villa virtually had nothing, but Gav, 25 minutes. And this was probably the best chance of the first half. And it fell to Aston Villa. It was Gusson about 8 yards out. And he thankfully hit it straight at Roefs. I mean, it was he kind of had to dig it out a bit, but a couple of yards either side, and it might have been a bigger problem. And then there was a follow-up from Watkins, who was offside in the end, but Roefs made another save from that. But it was a good, solid save. But it was one of these things, and we've said it a couple of times. Like we felt really comfortable first 25 minutes. And it's one of these things where suddenly Premier League teams will create a chance, and it just it's happened in every game where and again I think this was the best chance of the half, that you've just got to always stay on your toes, and thankfully Roefs was on it and he managed to save it.
Yeah, that was the only real, other than the goal they scored, that was the only real bit of quality they showed. They cut us open with sort of 2 or 3 passes, didn't they? Which it was really well worked, to be fair. But I said the same thing to the people I was with, Chris, at the game. I was saying, like, regardless of how bad Villa are, they've got good players who can produce things out of nothing, and virtually every team in this league have that quality. So yeah, you kind of expect it. I think it would be hard to point any blame at our players for anything in particular, because I think we were very organised, and we just they just played around us pretty well in that moment. And I would say that you look at the rest of the game and we learned from that, because I don't think they did it again. They tried, they tried to do it again, but they didn't, and that was a lot to do with just how well structured we were at the back. Well,
yeah, and there might have been a reason for that. And we'll get on to that now, because Phil on 32 minutes. Reinildo, Cash comes in a little bit late. He knocks the ball back. Reinildo knocks the ball back. Cash comes in a little bit late. And for me, I'd describe it as has a little nibble at him. But then Reinildo almost kind of throws himself to the floor a little bit, and then has a kick out. And then the referee comes over it. And then when you see it's VAR, and I don't think he saw it. I think he spoke to the VAR and they just had a quick conversation. He went, yeah, he's kicked out of it. And the red card came out pretty quick.
Yeah, I think from piecing together what we were sort of sent from the Premier League Match Centre, I think the referee gave the red card, whether it was potentially the linesman who's seen it maybe on that side. And then once the red card was given, there was a very, very brief VAR check. But I mean, obviously, the way it's set up now, it's meant to be overturning clear and obvious errors. And whatever you think about whether it was soft or whether Matty Cash has made a meal of it, there is absolutely no way that's getting overturned as a clear and obvious error, is it? And listen, for me, it's a red card. I just think it's a blatant red card. I think if it's the other way around and Matty Cash does that on Reinildo, I think you expect Reinildo to make a meal of it, if you like, and I think you would be absolutely furious if Matty Cash wasn't sent off. I just don't really know how to describe it other than a real rush of blood to the head, really. I think the fact that it is both feet that he kicks out with, and yes, it's he's not being particularly violent and it's petulant rather than aggressive, but you can't kick out with both feet like that. As soon as I saw the first replay, I thought that's a red card. It's however it gets, whether it's VAR or not. No, personally, absolutely no complaints with the decision. I think just a real poor lapse from an experienced player who's been excellent this season, but I just think, bad error, clear red for me.
Yeah, Gav,
I was just going to jump in there, Chris, because I was absolutely fuming all the way through the rest of the half and all the way through half time. I was like, you absolute idiot! What have you done that for? Why have you given the referee that choice?
Yeah, but Gav, I was going to say to you that when Phil was talking there, when we're talking about the decision and VAR or whatever, if you look at the replay, Gav, and you're talking about how fuming you were, I was exactly the same, because if you watch the replay and you watch the referee's initial instinct, he blows the whistle and gives us a free kick.
Yeah.
And we had possession of the ball, so it was kind of it was a win-win for us. Because of what he did, he flips it completely, and we're down to 10 men, and there was just no need for it at all.
No, none whatsoever. And he put us at jeopardy in that moment. Just a rush. Yes, it happens. It was a rush of blood. I'm sure he was really apologetic to his teammates when he went back in, but he's experienced and he should know better. He's played enough games with VAR to know that if you do something like that, you're not going to get away with it. And weirdly, it kind of helped us. It sounds stupid to say it, but it kind of did, because all of a sudden there was if there wasn't already enough pressure on Aston Villa to try and win a game of football and score a goal, which they've not done yet, they were then up against 10 men, and they were up against 10 men who were very motivated and well drilled, and perversely looked pretty happy to have 10 men and be like the underdog. It was weird because it was like literally within minutes, I think Mukiele made an unbelievable tackle and then was like throwing his arms up at the crowd to get people going, and then Hume done the same thing, and it was all in response to the fact we went down to 10 men. It galvanised us, even though we were already doing pretty well, but it galvanised us, and it absolutely piled the pressure back onto Villa to do something.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original, which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
But can I quickly ask you, Gav, just one last point on Reinildo, that he's been fantastic this season, brilliant player. But if you go back to the Brentford game, I thought he'd learned a lesson there when he gave that penalty away, and he should have given the penalty away before the actual penalty he gave away, I think. And I thought, right, he's learned a lesson there. He maybe that's his kind of hot streak over. People have calmed him down, told him to just, not be quite as rash. And he goes and does something like that.
Well, he comes from the school of Simeone, doesn't he? And I don't know if you saw Simeone and his coaching staff in midweek when the Champions League game against Liverpool, where one of his staff spat at someone in the crowd. One of them chucked water in the crowd. Like, there were a bunch of hotheads. So, he's going to have to nip that in the bud very quickly. Because he's such a good player. He's been brilliant for us. He's been really good. The thing is as well, and it's kind of a wider point, we'll not go too deep in it, I guess, Chris, but he's now going to miss 3 games because it's violent conduct. That's 3 games. We've got good players waiting for chances.
Mm-hmm.
So he's now gifted opportunities to somebody else. And what you want to see is Arthur Masuaku, Geertruida. Maybe we go to a back 3 and we play with wing backs like we did when we went to 10 men. I don't know what we're going to do. But somebody is going to get a chance as a result of him doing what he's done. Just a silly decision. I'm sure he regrets it, but it could have been costly. In previous years, the Sunderland teams would have folded after that. Game plan out the window, negativity, no chance to redeem yourself. I think the crowd had a lot to do with that as well, by the way. I think we responded pretty well to going down to 10 men. You do get that feeling that there's a real connection between the players and the crowd now. And going down to 10 men, you're right, well, we're the underdogs now. We're going to have to battle for this. And there was that feeling in the stands on the pitch. It all kind of, like I said, weirdly and perversely, it sort of helped us, because I don't think Villa actually fared well at all, being the team with 11 men. Their manager, he was, I don't know if you read the interviews after the game.
Yeah, we'll come on.
But he kind of touched on that, because really, if you have got 11 men for an hour, you should be winning that game, and they never looked like they were going to.
Yeah, and Phil, you mentioned about Chris Rigg, and you mentioned actually he played well before the game, and I mentioned one of those half chances. And there was a lovely play by Chris Rigg in the centre midfield, and he slid Isidor through, who had his shot blocked, and he started really brightly, as you said before, but it was a couple of minutes after the sending off where the manager needed to make a couple of changes, obviously tighten us up a bit. Ballard came on, and Gav was talking about providing opportunities by someone getting sent off, and that's how it's going to be this season. Ballard replaced Chris Rigg. But it seemed to me that, and I don't, you were probably closer to it, Phil, you maybe tell us there was a bit more to it, but it seemed like the players knew exactly what to do when we went down to 10 men. They went straight to a back 5. Talby pushed in at left back. We played 3 across the middle and Isidor up front on his own. But the players just seemed to snap straight into the formation, as if, the managers almost planned for this, said, right, we'll go down to 10 men. This is what happens.
Yeah, I think you could see that they were very comfortable. I think that it might sound a little bit simplistic, but I think that Sunderland have had a really clear idea of what they think they need this season, and they've gone out and recruited players who can do that. And why I say that is I think you very quickly end up with, in this case, a team of 10 who are very comfortable with what's been asked of them: compete, win duels, defend your box. And I think you could feel that almost the chemistry of that defence almost immediately with Xhaka and Siddiqui in front of them. They almost relished the challenge that was there. I thought we looked a little, I don't mean this as a criticism, I thought we looked a little bit stretched up until half time, just in terms of that understanding where people had to be in that formation. I thought from the moment we came out in the second half, I thought we looked incredibly comfortable and seemed to understand immediately how we were not just going to survive, but also try and create chances ourselves. Part of that was Nordy just launching it in the mixer with his long throw, which I just love. But also some of the combinations, when you mentioned Talby there, I thought Talby was as dangerous as I've seen him really in a Sunderland shirt. I thought he looked a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more decisive in possession, which was nice to see. But for me, it just all comes back to the fact that Sunderland's preparation from the season was, what do we need to look at like this season? What do we need? Well, we need players who are comfortable out of possession. We need players who can run. We need players who, yes, we need good players, obviously, players who can compete. And I just feel like that back 3, Ballard's, Alderete, Mukele, I just loved it. I thought it was so much fun just watching them just relish in the backs. Part of me was like, I'm actually really enjoying this. Let's just get someone sent off next week, and let's just have like these 3 heading everything. Trey Hume just smashing people and get the long throws in the box. I really enjoyed it. And I don't know, I'm being a little bit flippant, but I feel like the crowd enjoyed it. I think you could feel that. And Gav mentioned there the connection. I feel like people were like, this isn't ideal, but actually this is quite good fun. Like, we're kind of relishing this challenge. And I do think there's a real chemistry there in terms of the squad and also the fans. Yeah, obviously it's not ideal. And now that I've had a few hours away from the game, I actually feel quite frustrated because I feel like there was a massive opportunity to go and win it if it had been 11 against 11. But still, I thought it was really fun to watch that second half. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, Phil, very quickly, because we're going to talk for a while about how much fun it was with backs against the wall and all that sort of stuff. But just because that's how I started this whole podcast, because I sat there after the game feeling so proud of this team, and we'll get into all of that in the second half. But that there's you're talking half an hour, 11 against 11, Phil, and I just found myself frustrated that we weren't allowed to see that game play out, because I'm convinced that Villa being as they were and the way we started, we would have taken all 3 points.
It felt like it was a really big opportunity. I suppose you have to be fair and balanced as well and say, well, in that half an hour where it was 11 versus 11, we didn't have any clear opportunities. I guess it's not as if we were playing Aston Villa off the park, but I agree with you that we looked very, very comfortable, and it felt like it was a real opportunity to potentially go and get 3 points. And if you're then sitting with 10 points from 5 games, I mean, that is an exceptional start. As it is, it's 8 from 5, which is a really, really good return, which I think, if we're honest, we'd have all absolutely snapped anybody's hands off at the start of the season. It's a bit weird the way it's worked out with it being the Burnley game, the one that we've lost. But a really solid start of the season. But yeah, the more distance I have from the game, the more frustration I have, if that makes sense, because the more you're like, yeah, actually, I would really like to have seen how that would have played out, because I feel like we'd have had a good chance of taking those 3 points.
Yeah. And that second half kicked off, Gav, and I thought after the first couple of minutes, because Villa pinned us in for the first couple of minutes, and I thought this is going to be a really long half. And I think there was a VAR penalty check in the first couple of the minutes of the second half. But then we got out and we kept breaking on them and worrying them, and especially at set pieces. And 5 minutes into the second half, there was a long throw and it caused problems. Mukiele's long throws really causing them problems. And we kept the ball alive, and it ended up coming to Alderete and the header, and he looped it over the keeper, and I thought I was celebrating. I thought that was it. I thought we'd taken the lead. It came back off the bar, and Ballard nearly got the follow-up. But that was the start of it, wasn't it? I think we realised then that basically on set pieces and anything, even any free kicks we got on the halfway line, it was either Roefs or Xhaka just knocking long diagonal balls up, because we knew any long ball into the box, we had them.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the exact stat is, but one of my mates was saying that he'd seen a stat before the game about the long balls. And apparently there's been more long balls in the Premier League this season already than at the same point in any other Premier League season since they started doing statistics on it. I might be wrong, but there has been some sort of change in approach from a lot of teams, and we've built a team where you look at it and you go, well, physically we can, doesn't matter if the other team's got better players than us, we can compete physically in the air, on the ground, in terms of pace, athleticism, everything. We can compete in that regard, and if we get beaten by a better football team, then that's fair enough. But you're going to have a lot of games like we had today where we play a team like, look at that Villa team, you mentioned it before, Phil. Bloody hell, there's hundreds of millions of pounds worth of quality footballers on the pitch and on the bench. And yet Sunderland wanted it more, and physically we were competing. And, you look at Mukiele and Alderete. I mean, what a pair of signings they've been. They're both brilliant. Again, one of my mates said after the game, he goes, you put them two in Man U's defence and they'd be better. You're talking about like players who Man U had never, ever signed, but, that's how good they are, right? So in these moments in games, you don't realise how many opportunities. I've talked about this, about maximising opportunities quite a bit recently. It almost feels like we've looked at a game over 90 minutes and gone, well, in a game over 90 minutes, where can Sunderland be just as good, if not better, than other teams? And we're going to get lots of throw-ins, we're going to get set players and things like that. So, build a team that you can actually maximise them opportunities with. And that was the case with that chance. Mukiele's long throws are a weapon. And I've seen other teams do it this season, but it's a weapon, particularly when you've got people like Alderete and Ballard in the box. I mean, I can't think of I think I said this the other day on a pod, but I can't think of another player like Ballard who, maybe Harry Maguire, he's quite good at it. In terms of the way he attacks the ball and in both boxes, really. But Alderete is of the same school, isn't he? Alderete is he loves to get his head on the end of the ball, and it was a great opportunity, and we hit the ball, but it was out and out, really, wasn't it? It wasn't like we hadn't cut Villa apart and worked it wide and whipped it into the box and then got a chance from it. It was like you say, it was as route one as it gets. It was a long throw into the box that caused problems, and like I keep saying, we've got to maximise them opportunities to be able to get advantages in games.
Yeah. And you mentioned school. It was School of Hard Knocks. I think those two were from when they go. They just love 100%. Sticking their heads in. Because Phil, I mean, for the next 10, 15 minutes after that, it was just. I mean, it was easy to forget that we were the team down to 10 men because Villa kept coming forward with the ball. We kept soaking it up, coming in a bit. And then we just kept hitting them on the break. And when we got forward, there was a period where I think there was one point we had a long throw that caused problems. Then we had 2 corners after that. There was 3 players trying to mark down Ballard. But it was a proper throwback. It felt really old-fashioned in terms of us just getting the ball into the box where it was dangerous. And for that period of time, it just looked like if anyone was going to score, it was going to be Sunderland.
Yeah, I thought not just impressive in terms of playing with 10 men. I thought Sunderland were genuinely the better team in the second half. Well, even after Matty Cash's goal, really. But I think sometimes it's simplicity, isn't it? There was nothing, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, there was nothing complicated about what Sunderland were trying to do. There was we have to defend our box well. We will use the pace that we have on the break to try and win set plays. I thought we were smartly playing for set plays, and that's what Talby and Isidor were doing. And you mentioned there in terms of these guys, Mukiele and Alderete, and how good they are, and Ballard as well. But they're not being asked to do anything they're not comfortable doing. And again, that comes back to having a really clear vision for how someone wanted the team to play this season and then getting players who can execute it. And that's not me saying that these guys are bad footballers, because they're obviously not, but that's not what makes them top level players. That's not what their absolute kind of super strengths are. Just used a Lee Johnsonism there. That's come back from nowhere. a super strength. Wow. But yeah, do you know what I mean? Though Sunderland have obviously had a really clear vision of what they want their players to do, and they've got the players who can do that. And I thought, I think Gav's earlier point was right. It's you never want to play with 10 men, but it kind of suited the personnel that Sunderland have, and it gives me a bit of confidence because there's going to be games this season where Sunderland have 20% possession. There's just no point pretending otherwise, and that's fine. And it feels like there's almost like the DNA of this team is to quite enjoy that and to quite enjoy taking it on. But I agree. I don't think Sunderland just competed with 10. I thought they were genuinely the better team for the vast majority of the second half.
Athletes and legs all over the pitch as well, Phil. It's just you get the impression that they love working hard. They love it. Like Noah Siddiqui, I'd love to see the amount of ground he covered today. He was everywhere. That it was kind of it felt like as soon as somebody stepped out of position, whether that be a left back, a centre mid, a striker, a defender, he was covering. He was in there covering. And then when we didn't have the ball, he's he's chasing it down at the top end of the pitch, and then he's all of a sudden he's back in the first third of the pitch in our defensive third, and it's woven through the DNA of this full team. Every player we've signed has been signed because they've got those qualities, and I mean, it's going to stand us in good stead. And you're right about the fact that we're going to come up against teams who are going to dominate the ball, and that's why we've built this team. We've looked at it and gone, what's the best way to survive in the Premier League? I'm not saying survive in terms of just staying up. I mean, getting through games against teams full of good players. And it's like I said, we're never going to go out and sign Lionel Messi, and we're never going to go out and sign Kylian Mbappe, and we're not going to get that quality of player is not going to come to Sunderland. But the way we can compete is in them duels, is in the battle. We can sign players who are better than Ollie Watkins, Morgan Rogers, you name him. You can sign players who are better at that side of the game, and it almost evens the playing field, because it doesn't matter how good you might have a centre forward who's got a proven record of scoring goals in the Premier League, but if you put 3 lads up against him who will not let him breathe every time the ball comes near him, what's he going to do?
Yeah, well, Rogers gets you a Diarra and a Siddiqui in terms of transfer fees. I think he was 50 million or something, wasn't he? And you get Diarra and Siddiqui. And Siddiqui went off a cramp in the end because he was so knackered. He kind of ran himself into the ground.
Did he though? Because I don't know if you saw the post on Instagram that's been going round, but the club had said it was something along the lines of, "Is there any surprise that Noah Siddiqui had cramp because of the amount of running he did?" And he commented on and he said, "I didn't have cramp. I was just buying some time for the team."
Oh, right, fair enough.
I saw that. Has anyone pointed out and know that the game was still going on while he was lying on the floor?
Yeah.
I think he needs to work on his time wasting if not.
Well, I'm sure it was a Villa player helping him out with cramp at one point. But
Tyrone Mings.
Phil, just during this spell, there was a funny corner actually where we left 3 Villa players down injured, which I thought was I think Ballard just knocked 3 of them over while he was trying to get the ball. But there was one corner, and you might be able to clear this up or not. I don't know, Phil, but it was just after the hour mark. There was a corner, and it actually ended up. It was the one where Isidor tried to do that kind of black flick, and he flicked it over the bar. But the referee kind of waves the corner to be taken. The corner is just taken, and the referee kind of blows up and stops play, and books one of those players, or books a Villa player for climbing or for holding on to Dan Ballard. Why is that not a penalty?
I assume it's because the ball's not actually in play. But I'll be honest with you, I literally made a note of that during the game. I'm going to try and get an answer to that tomorrow. So I will try and get the bottom of that and tag you in it tomorrow. I assume it's because the ball isn't actually in play. But I don't know what the exact rule is.
The corner was actually taken because the ball came in when the referee went, right, stop, I'm going to book you. But we'd actually kicked the ball, hadn't we?
Right, yeah. I'm not sure. I didn't think the corner had actually been taken. I thought they were just grappling. So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to try and get the bottom of that. Someone said to me today that it was because the play hadn't restarted, but I wasn't really aware of that rule. So I will try and clear that up, and I'll tag you in it tomorrow. But it's a good point, because I've never seen that before. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
To be honest, I thought the referee was very strange. I think he did get the Reinildo call right, but I just think as a game over the 90 odd minutes or whatever it was, I think he refereed it poorly, and I think there was a point after sort of an hour or so where I was just like, is he actually giving Sunderland anything here? It was every little. John McGinn was in his lug constantly. He's irritating, by the way. I hadn't realised how irritating he is till today. When I'm watching him, and he's just charging up to the ref constantly, and he's got that privilege as a captain. He can speak to the referee, but he was in his lug constantly, and I do feel like it worked, because every little niggly foul that really you're looking at some of them and you're going, they're not fouls. He was given everything. Absolutely everything.
He gave. I think Villa felt the same, to be honest. I think he was just given. He was given all sorts of niggly stuff.
I think it was sort of that first hour or so where I just felt as though he'd given them all the sort of the dubious ones that could have went either way. It felt like he was giving them to them. But then you're right. I think, especially towards the end of the game, I think we got quite a few as well. But he just I thought it was a strange refereeing performance. I don't know who was the ref, but he was pretty poor, I thought.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
This episode is brought to you by Nature's Bounty. Nature's Bounty believes your body is brilliant, naturally designed to thrive, inside and out. For those always looking for new ways to support your health from head to heels, Nature's Bounty has a range of over 400 vitamins and supplements born from 50 years of trust and care. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature. Visit naturesbounty.com to learn more.
Learning through play starts with Lego Duplo. With Lego Duplo, toddlers can develop real-life skills while having fun with colorful bricks made just for them. Large, easy to grip, and safe to explore. When children express themselves with Lego Duplo, they build patience, problem-solving, and empathy. See your child learn perseverance and self-expression with everything they imagine and create. Visit lego.com/preschool to learn more.
I'll stick with you for a minute, Gav, actually, because you say that just after the hour, 65 minutes this was, it was, and actually I think it's linked to what happened a minute later when we went behind, but 65 minutes is the Hume tackle. Now, he did make some contact with the ball, but he did play the man as well. But it's funny because it's almost like everybody stopped in terms of the Aston Villa players, especially the Aston Villa players, because I'm not sure they're used to seeing that sort of tackle in the Premier League.
Nah, it was mint though, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. I've watched the replay of it about 50 times. He definitely gets something on the ball, but
he touches the ball, but
but I think Trey Hume has got that down to a fine art. That line where it's like it's almost GBH, but it's actually a legal tackle.
But if he misses, because he plays the top of the ball, Gav, and you're talking about taking risks, and it's down to 10 men. If he misses, and he's only caught the top of the ball, if he misses the ball, that's a red card.
Yeah, but he didn't, so it's all right. Trey Hume, that's one of his.
I don't know. You're going to say that.
Yeah, but it's one of his greatest qualities, isn't it? As a defender, that he seems to get them decisions right. The ability to just. You're right though. Another couple inches here or there, and it could have been another red card. But I mean, what a tackle, man! I love them.
Oh, yeah.
If there's one thing the game needs to bring back, it's that. It's like, let people just hurt each other. Sometimes it's great. It's like the Brereton Diaz tackle in the playoff final. It was very similar to that, wasn't it? Where like he knows what he's doing, right? He's very, very good at it, and not many players are very good at that. And I mean, Morgan Rogers, I don't even think he touched the ball again after that. It's like
he didn't.
It was a proper. No, well, that's it. He'd been absolutely halved. Do you know this as well? Just on a more serious point, Chris, kind of in the build up the game when we were doing pods and stuff, we were talking about the potential of like, is Hume's place potentially under threat now?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Jeff Brown when he was on with you last week, and he was saying sort of, you look at Hume as a championship player, and physically, he looked, there was nothing peculiar about Trey Hume as a championship defender from a physique perspective. And then you see him on the pitch with these bigger lads now, and you're like, actually, he's not the biggest. And, we're signing like Dutch international defenders here. And, we've got a lot of quality in the ranks now. And is his place potentially under threat longer term? That's the kind of performance I wanted to see, because he was just as good as everybody else today. And he showed the reasons why last season I was saying he's the most Premier League ready player we've got, because he was outstanding. And to be honest, and I think that the circumstances of the game suited him. He had to defend. He had to be smart. There wasn't a lot of onus on him to get forward and create chances or whatever. And I actually thought as well, another thing on Hume, I thought his set pieces were much better today. I thought every time he put a ball into the box, it caused problems. And they haven't been like that necessarily this season when he's taken free kicks and corners. So yeah, I just think it was a great tackle. Like I say, I absolutely love out like that.
Yeah, just to get you in on the tackle a little bit, Phil, because I actually wonder whether, Hume went into that tackle and it actually comes from the ball going out, that Aston Villa bring the ball back into the middle and it ends up at Cash's feet in the centre of the park. And from that tackle, we fall asleep and the ball comes across. There's no pressure on it's probably the first time that we dropped that concentration levels and nobody pushed out to the ball. Nobody put any pressure on it. And Cash was able to get the ball out of his feet and hit that shot. I mean, it was a well-struck shot, and you see it from behind, the swerve that he got on it. The ball didn't half move in the air. And, you wonder if it's a combination of the swerve, potentially that he had this, Roefs had the sun in his eyes. But the thing that I would maybe point out was he looked to have gone with his fists. But I don't know what you made of their goal, but put them ahead.
I thought it was an error. I expect the goalkeeper to save that personally. And I say that from, I honestly think there's a good chance we sit at the end of the season and say he was the best signing by an absolute mile, because I think everything he's done, and even everything else he did today in terms of how quick he is off his line and how he comes and claims things, I think he's excellent. But for me, I think that's the save you expect him to make. Yes, it swerves, but he sees it pretty much all the way. And he looks in a decent position to make the save. Reminded me a little bit of Embleton's in the playoff final. Where it does swerve on David Stockdale late, but sees it all the way, looking right down at it. I thought it was an error, and that's not me digging him out to say I think he's excellent, but I think he'll be disappointed personally when he sees that back, and frustrating because especially when Aston Villa have an extra player, you expect to kind of get carved open, and didn't really happen until the last 5 or 6 minutes, really, when we just looked shattered, and actually they started to move it a bit quicker, and Sancho put some good balls in. So really frustrating that was how we conceded, and everyone will have their opinions, but I did think that was a bit of an error for me.
I don't know if you've seen the angle from behind the goal or not, but there's a good angle from behind the goal, very central to the ball, and it's almost like there's two players in his way initially. And the ball kind of swerves. I can't remember who it was. It's probably Alderete and Ballard or something like that. But the ball kind of swerves around them, and it all happens that quick. I agree, by the way. I agree. I want him to do better with that. But I can see why he maybe... I don't know if he did see it all the way. It was in motion. I'm at the other end of the ground. So I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh, he should be saving that. But then I've seen that angle from behind the goal, and I'm like, I can kind of see why it wasn't as clear as it should have been, but he still should be saving it. And as well, yeah, Phil, you're right. I think that aside, he had a really good game. I thought he did a lot right. And perhaps it's kind of a reminder to us, because we've all been saying, bloody hell, this kid is just unbelievable. He is actually very young, and it's his second season as a pro. He's only ever played one full season before this one. So he's going to make the odd error, isn't he? He's going to make mistakes occasionally. But as long as for 99% of the time he's the Robin Roefs that we've seen so far, I can live for that, I think. He's going to make the odd error.
Yeah, but their lead only lasted around 10 minutes, Phil, and we equalised. And I thought, again, we were kind of pushing, and the crowd kind of helped push the team on. And I think, can't remember, I think it was Isidor after the game mentioned the crowd, and I think the players could feel that actually we were pushing them on. And Villa almost, it's weird because I thought that when they went ahead, Villa almost thought, right, we'll play this out as if there's only 5 minutes left. But there was still kind of 25 minutes to go of the game plus injury time. But the goal, I mean, and you mentioned Talby earlier on, Phil, and I thought twice Talby was really positive in this mood that led up to the goal. Cut inside. It's the first time we've really seen him cut inside and take some players on. And then the shot ended up being half cleared. And this is the brilliance of Xhaka. The amount of players where the ball would land on their head at this point and it would end up in the goalkeeper's arms. And all he did was just cushion the ball into the right area over the top, right into Isidor's path. It was absolute genius, and it showed kind of why you buy players like that. But again, starting with Talby, I thought it was fantastic to see him being positive in that way.
Yeah, I thought he looked a lot more aggressive today. Again, maybe the game scenario kind of suited him a little bit, that he almost had to carry the ball more. He had to take players on more. Maybe it kind of worked for him. I agree. I thought he was positive, and a really clever pass from Xhaka. And credit to Isidor for being aware as well, because you could see when he went off, he almost had to be carried off, wasn't he? He was absolutely shattered. And it's one of those where you take all the positives from a Sunderland perspective and give all the praise where it's due. And then you watch it back and you just think, Aston Villa, how on earth are you allowing a team with 10 players to score from that scenario? It's when you watch it back, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Just nobody moving, incredible lack of awareness. It's I don't want to take anything away from someone, but that is an incredible goal for a team that finished in the top 6 of the Premier League last season to concede.
Yeah. Brilliant though, Gav, in terms of being down to 10 men, going behind and showing that bottle to be the best team after that point and push Villa back and to the point where Villa thought we need to just see this game out because Sunderland are dangerous.
Yeah, but one of the things which we really excelled in through the game was winning them second balls. I don't think we lost many of them up until maybe we got a bit careless towards the end of the game. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, but we were never weaker than Villa when it came to that sort of scenario. And Xhaka winning that. Yes, there's a lot of quality involved because of the way he plays it. But if you watch Isidor, he's on his toes. He's almost waiting for that to happen. And he talked about that after the game, that interview that you mentioned. And Isidor cost £3 million. I mean, he was up against an England international centre half and was just more focused, more switched on, more determined. Like, all of these qualities which pervade in almost every single player we've got. He was showing them in that moment, was ready, was switched on, up against players who should not be gifting him opportunities like that. But it doesn't. Yes, that quality from Xhaka is fantastic, and that's the assist. But it doesn't happen if Isidor's not on his toes, and also, and you don't really see it on the TV replay. Where I was in the southwest corner, I was a little bit worried he might have fouled their defender because he used his hands to sort of tussle in front of him. So we were celebrating, but we were almost a bit like, the way the game had gone, we were like, oh, we're just waiting for VAR to call that off. But obviously it didn't. But the reason I bring it up is because he had to be physical. He had to be determined to just fashion a chance. And he mentioned it in his interview. He said, once the ball fell, I just had to shoot. He didn't have time to think about it. And that's where Isidor, that's where he's useful, isn't he? If you look at the goals he scored for Sunderland, he doesn't often have much time to think about what he's doing. It's all on instinct. It's all, he just does it. And that was that goal, wasn't it? Yes, he was ready for the ball, but he didn't have time to take a touch and shoot. It was just a case of lash your foot at it, get in front of your man and whack it. And, you mentioned before about the connection between players and the crowd and stuff. There's a reason Wilson Isidor's now scored 3 goals in 3 consecutive home games. And by the way, that's the first time anybody's ever done that for a newly promoted team. Did say that stat earlier. He really does thrive off the crowd, and the crowd thrive off him. And I just think if the fans aren't fully behind the team at that point in the game, you don't get moments like that. They just don't happen. You don't get them opportunities falling to you. So it's a credit to everybody that we scored that goal. But you're right, Aston Villa, I mean, they're going to have some serious questions coming out of this game because they just shouldn't be allowing Sunderland chances like that. When they want to, like you said, that they almost try to play the game out, and I think I agree with that. But isn't that stupid? Isn't that really silly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just on that point, Phil, because the rest of the game, we're down to 10 men, players are knackered, so we naturally just went further and further back. And I think nowadays it's called the low block, but you used to just kind of say, you just sit on the edge of the area basically. But it's the low block now. But Aston Villa never really looked like scoring it. And Gav's saying and I think you've both actually said during this podcast that, Aston Villa were poor, or Aston Villa couldn't do this. But sometimes when you look at the performances of Mukiele, Alderete, Ballard, that actually, yes, okay, well, you can maybe point Aston Villa, but I think you've got to say, well, were Aston Villa like that because we were good?
I think there's a little bit of both. I mean, I thought we managed stoppage time pretty well. I thought there was probably a 10-minute period before that where I genuinely felt that we looked quite stretched. I thought that Aston Villa were finding it quite easy to get into good crossing opportunities, and that ball that Sancho puts in, I mean, that's a sitter for Watkins. And I think we deserved that bit of luck. I thought we deserved a point, absolutely no doubt in my mind. That effort from Harvey Elliott, which he whipped just wide of the far post, I thought that was in all the way. So I did think that Aston Villa for a little spell looked like they were kind of actually making that extra man advantage. But I thought that Sunderland's defensive shape and their structure and their resilience was really top draw. And I for all that, as I say, I think Watkins, that was a big miss later on. I thought Sunderland were good value for the point. I think we had 4 shots on target there too. We ended up with a better XG, which when you play for almost an hour with 10 men, it's really, really impressive stuff. And yeah, a lot of that was from long throws and set plays and causing a bit of havoc. But that was the sensible way to play from the situation we had. And I could sit here and talk all day about Mikel Alderete and Ballard. I just thought it was great. It just felt like a real throwback. Really enjoyed the way they went about it.
Yeah. Just quickly, Phil, between those three, because you've just mentioned those three names again. Mukiele got man of the match on Sky, but who would you have given it to?
Yeah, I thought Mukiele for me. I just thought he was exceptional. I really like Alderete because I think he's got a good blend between, he does the defensive stuff well, but never gives the ball away. And yeah, he's not trying anything particularly ambitious, but I really like his composure. But for me, Mukele's blend of being very good on the ball, very quick. I mean, that one where Malen was in, one of the very, very few times we actually got caught out, and Mukele just nudged him off the ball. Like, it was just so easy for him. But not just the strength and decision making to not give away a penalty, but actually the recovery pace. And the fact that he's got a long throw. I feel like the ghosts of Rory Delapia have finally been exercised. We found someone who's got a long throw, and we've discovered it before they leave to join Stoke. So yeah, I thought for me he was my standout man of the match. I loved watching him play. I thought it was great fun, and all the whipping the crowd up and stuff as well, just really getting into it. And yeah, it was great, man. I love that.
Yeah. Well, actually, just quickly, incidentally, that Galen chance where he went through, it actually led to a scoring.
Is that right? Yeah, I haven't put two together.
He goes through, Mukiele nips it off him, and we attack, and that's how we get the goal. But Gav, there was a couple of nervy moments in the last kind of 5-10 minutes, as Phil said. But I always felt comfortable.
Yeah, to a degree. If I was going to be critical, I don't think we looked after the ball well enough. It was going forward to my end there, and it was coming straight back. We didn't hold on to the ball, and that's difficult when you're stretched. You've got 10 men. We were tired, so you can excuse it. But I just think we kind of did waste the opportunity to just hang on to it a bit, and it kept on coming back. And then when you start doing that more than once, you then start getting panicky. And I'm naturally a worrier, anyways. When that's happened at the match, I'm crossing every finger and toe, and I'm praying, and I'm just shooing every single ball away from the goal. Like that's just the way I am. Maybe I'm just a bit more nervous in them moments than other people, but yeah, I thought we maybe didn't look after the ball well enough. But when you say we didn't particularly feel threatened or whatever it was that you said, I think that's probably indicative of how well we played, yes, but also what does that say about like Villa as well? With the amount of talent they had on the pitch, you never looked at them and went, they're gonna tear us to strips here with 10 men. Even at the end of the game, I'm looking around the pitch. They've got some unbelievable names on the pitch, and yet they just. I keep coming back to this point, Chris, but it's so true. Physicality is so important in this league, and because we were able to better them in them aspect, and we got that impression when I spoke before the game to the lad from the Athletic, and he was telling us about Villa. And he was saying, like, they've struggled when it comes to second balls and set pieces and physically and dominating midfield and all those. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, I should be really enthused by this, but it makes us more worried than anything because, really, they were the perfect opponent for us in terms of styles. That in every aspect of Villa was struggling in, we were excelling in. And I actually think you saw that towards the end of the game because it didn't matter how good some of those players were individually. They never really looked, other than that moment where they cut us open in the first half, they never really looked like working around us. We were just so organised. And what, we were worried before the season started, Chris, about our ability to, naturally you're like, God, the Premier League's so difficult. How are we going to compete? Some of these players are just brilliant players, and it doesn't matter how good we are, it's going to be tough to compete. But like, I'm not fazed at all now. And I said this on the reaction pod to the lads, but I don't think we go down. I just don't. because I've seen in 5 games, I've seen the way we compete, and I just think you've got to give up to drop lots of points in this league. We're going to lose lots of games. We are, that's a given. But I just think we're going to come up against a lot of teams with a lot of good players, and if we can have the mentality we had today, in the way that we saw that game out, and we got a point, we'll be fine.
Yeah. Just very quickly, Phil, before we come on to the big summary, I just wanted to make a point of the late substitute when Siddiqui did come off. Dan Neil did come on. His 199th appearance for Sunderland, and it was 5 years ago this month he made his debut for Sunderland. But just while we've got you, Phil, because he did come on for his first Premier League appearance, which was fantastic to see. But just very quickly, do you see him being a Sunderland player in February?
Right now, my gut says no. I think the big question mark and the weird thing about the season that throws everything kind of out of kilter is the Africa Cup of Nations, because Dan Neil is going to start 4 or 5 games, and there is an opportunity for him there for everything to change. So that makes me think that makes me be really reluctant to give you a kind of a definitive answer either way, because and you're going to see in future weeks, I think, coming up now, and the rig decision today kind of feeds into it. You're going to see Lebris giving these guys opportunities, because he'll understand that he cannot put these guys in against Man City, Liverpool, whoever we're playing that month without any Premier League football. So I think there's an avenue there that potentially sees Neil kind of get a regular run, and that could change everything. But these talks have been going on for a long time, and you've seen how many other players have renewed in that time. I don't feel particularly optimistic about it at the moment, but I have to say, like, really, really pleased for him, because I remember you mentioned there 5 years ago, I remember speaking to Dan. There wasn't a game you were mentioning, but after a game against MK Dons, and I think it was in the Pizza Cup, as a young lad then who'd talked about wanting to take Sunderland back into the Premier League because it was his club and how far it had fallen. Amazing moment for him to get on the pitch in a Premier League game today. And I think Daniel's a great player, and I think at times he's been underrated, and I think at times he's had stick that he has absolutely not deserved. But even taking that aside, your opinions of the player, how awesome that a lad who had the opportunity to leave the club when we were at our lowest ebb could have easily walked out like loads of other players did, actually decided he was going to stick it out, and to have that full circle moment where he was able to go on the pitch as a Sunderland Premier League player in a good Sunderland team who are going to be competitive. I'm absolutely, whatever happens, I'm buzzing for him that he got that moment, because he really deserves it.
Talking about full circle, I'm sure his debut was Aston Villa under 21s, I think, when we beat them 8-1.
I think it was, yeah. Yeah, I think it was.
But just quickly, so you can help me out, Phil, just to finish up with, is it a point gained or 2 points dropped?
It is a point gained. It's a really weird satisfaction, because it's a point gained. It has to be a point gain. I think you just have to praise the players for what they did. It's frustrating, but it's a point closer to where we need to be at the end of the season. And I still go back to however poor Villa were. If you'd said to me, would you take a point before kickoff, I would have taken it. So when you add in the circumstances of the game itself, I think you have to take the point and move on.
Yeah, and Gav, what's your take on that? Are you happy with a point, or do you think we've dropped 2?
No, I'm over the moon with the point. No, I take the point about this was a vulnerable Aston Villa team who I think we beat with 11 men, but you've got to take into account what happened in the game. And coming away from the ground, it felt like we'd won. There was a feeling like everybody was really happy with the result, and at the end of the game, virtually everybody stayed in their seat to clap the players off. The ground was really full. Everyone stayed back to sing Wise Men Say and all the rest of it. So, yeah, we drew, but it did have that. Wasn't quite as good as a win, but it was, wasn't far off. And I think there's just, I still can't believe, I'm sitting here and I'm saying we should have beat Aston Villa. I'm still pinching myself that we're in the Premier League and my team's competing, not just competing, but excelling in some cases against sides who a couple of years ago I wouldn't have dreamt of us playing. So, you've got to look at this opportunity and say that is a point gained, because when we went down to 10 men with an hour to play, well, actually, 66 minutes or whatever it ended up being, I was not confident that we were going to I was so frustrated with what Reinildo had done. I was like, he's ruined this game. We're going to struggle now. And actually, it kind of all fed into that attitude and that feeling that we were the underdogs. We battled for it. We earned it. And we came from behind as well, by the way. So, if we took the lead and then conceded a late goal, it would have a different feeling, wouldn't it? So I jokingly said to you before we hit record, we won 1-1. That's kind of how it felt.
Yeah, that's it. And Phil, just to finish up with, I'm just reading that Sunderland only the third newly promoted team in the last 7 seasons in the Premier League to win as many as 8 points from the opening 5 games. I mean, we're getting off to a cracking start. There's a couple of frustrating things in there. Maybe Burnley, maybe today, where we think but we can't kind of ask for too much. And we go to Nottingham Forest next week. With these sort of performances where. Actually, and Gav's mentioned it on previous pods as well, but Phil, at the minute, it's almost to the point where we don't fear anyone.
No, I genuinely, I completely agree with that. It's going to be a little bit different where we get into that stretch of the season where, we've got Liverpool and Man City, haven't we, back to back away from home, and that's going to be very different. But outside of that sort of very top 4 or 5, I don't think there is anything to fear. Yes, be respectful of the quality they have, but we're setting up in a way sort of mitigate their threats. And colleague said to me today that I think I don't think there's a team in Premier League history has taken 8 points from the first 5 and got relegated. I think it's 15 promoted teams who've done that and stayed up. So the omens are really good. And yeah, I'm all in. Let's 1-1 our way to safety. Let's get someone sent off, get the big men on. Let's just defend our box, get the long throws in. Works for me, man. I enjoy it.
Get it in the mixer. Brilliant. That's a perfect place to leave us off for tonight. And so it just leaves me to say thank you very much, Gav.
No worries, mate. Thank you very much.
And Phil, thanks again for your time. Much appreciated.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Good stuff. And thanks again for everyone for listening. Of course, we'll have loads of reaction on the Roker Report website, as well as our daily releases on How We're the Podcast. So you only have to wait 24 hours for the next one. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.